the magic of Wicca, Wicca being this practice of British witchcraft not being a bad thing, a good thing, right? The other thing I loved is the death card was not this Grim Reaper, but a woman, and she's in her crone years. What's up everyone, it's your boy Kyle Gray. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite tarot deck of all time. It's called the DruidCraft Tarot. If we've never been formally introduced to each other before, I am an author and an oracle card creator, and my life's work is to help as many people get spiritually connected as humanly possible. And I do that through a number of different mediums, no pun intended, whether that be teaching people how to connect with their angels, practice Kundalini yoga and meditation, or learn how to work with crystals to apply healing in their life and the lives of others as well. So I was looking through my card deck collection, and there was one tarot deck that kind of took over my readings for a number of years. Just to kind of fill you in if you don't know my story, I've been doing readings, as in card readings, since I was 15 years old. I got my first card deck 2 weeks before my 15th birthday. And on my 15th birthday, I used gift vouchers to buy even more. And I really done this deep dive into magic and spirituality. All because when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it sent me on this deep spiritual dive. When I look back at my life, because, you know, I've had a wondrous, adventurous life, I had many spiritual experiences. I was paralyzed when I was a child, and I also was visited by the energy of my grandmother the same night she passed away when I was just 4 years old. So I've had all these spiritual experiences, but it wasn't until my teenage years that I was able to kind of formulate what had happened to me in my life and realize that I was actually having these spiritual awakenings, and that really sent me on the journey of delving deep into magic, the tarot, angels, and all these different things. A few years into me doing readings, I remember being on all these like tarot forums. You know, this was like the days of MSN groups and forums. We didn't have Facebook or Bebo, and MySpace wasn't even a thing yet. And I used to go on all these forums and read about the tarot and all these things. And I remember reading about this forthcoming oracle deck called the DruidCraft Tarot, which was about taking the magic of Wicca, Wicca being this practice of British witchcraft not being a bad thing, a good thing, right? And also Druidry, Druidry being the gatekeepers of the land and those who created standing stones and poetry and all these tales of the land who really honor the seasons. So it was bringing the traditions of Wicca and Druidry into one practice called the DruidCraft. And I remember pre-ordering this tarot deck way back then, and the day it came out, it didn't show up at my door. And I remember getting a lift, as in someone to ride me to the post office, and I went to the post office sorting office to see what it was, and they were able to give it to me over the counter. That's how excited I was about this tarot. I love what I'd done in my life, because I used to write little notes to myself in my book. So I wrote to myself, and I called myself Angel Oracle at the time. And I signed my signature April 2005, 18 years ago. So if you don't know, I am a bit of a tarot geek, and I don't really read tarot publicly. But if a friend or a family member is really going through a hard time, that's what I go to. I use the tarot. I know I've created 8 of my own oracle decks, but there's just something about the tarot that speaks to me, and I can read it. So here's some of the things that I love about this tarot deck. One of the things that always bugged me about using the tarot was some of the cards were a little bit scary for many people who were getting a reading. So if you know about the tarot and you study the tarot, you know that certain things shouldn't be, scared of. But a lot of people who've never had a tarot reading, might be scared about seeing certain cards show up. And one of them was the devil. And, the devil card is not a bad card because it really can just represent lust. It can be a gross attachment to material things. If the devil card comes up and someone is married, it can actually be a really positive thing because it can represent being bound and longevity in the marriage. But one of the things I loved about the DruidCraft Tarot is they replaced the devil with Cernunnos. And Cernunnos is the horned stag god of the earth. And there was this kind of like story that was running through the tarot. If I can find his card. this story of the same characters being all the way through. So Cernunnos, this kind of powerful, horned god of the earth, and a bringer of fertility and, not necessarily lust, but passion, was there. And he's kind of watching over these sleeping lovers. And you'll see them in the lovers card as well. This kind of like, high priest, high priestess figure making love in the forest. And if you really look into some of the cards, you'll see there's like these green men faces in the earth or in the grass, and these kind of like animals throughout the deck. I think this is like a white deer, like a baby white deer, a symbol of purity. And when I look at the Cernunnos card, he kind of looks like Odin because he only has one eye that's visible. And as you know, the Art Father only had one eye. So that was really fascinating to me. And then as I really got to know the Oracle deck, I realized that the journey of the Fool, so if you know anything about the tarot, is it starts with the 0 card, which is the Fool, and he starts to go on this progressive journey throughout the tarot. And what I really loved about this was the Fool, this kind of enigmatic character, this elusive character. When you look at the card, you're like, I'm not sure if the Fool is masculine or feminine. And that was actually something that I learned from working with this tarot deck through the years, is that the Fool interchangeably becomes masculine and feminine throughout the deck. It's the same blonde-haired, blue-eyed being. And so in the Hanged Man, I mean, his whole pee-pee is out, and he's the Green Man, and he's hanging upside down in the sign of Jupiter. Really interesting here. And then in the World is a more feminine, has breasts, and the Star is more feminine. In the Lovers, it is the Lovers, both sides and both versions of the Lover. So there was this kind of like story running through the tarot. The other thing I loved is the Death card was not, this Grim Reaper, but a woman, and she's in her crone years, and she has a scythe on her belt, and she's carrying a skull, and in the distance you can see there's standing stones and a hawk or an eagle overhead. The adder is behind her, and there's faces, carved in, and she's looking over this cauldron. What I then realized was that the same being, because that's through the stories, because here the Fool is reborn as the sun god. This represents the 21st of December, where the rebirth of the sun, and the winter solstice brings more light. You see the journey of the Fool die and be reborn through the deck. And there's this other card, which I can't even pronounce. I'm going to just say this. Ferilt, which is the the card of the Temperance, it's the same being in all the cards, just different ages, different phases of life, same cauldron, same spaces, revisiting these stories. And I think that is super fascinating, because if you know about the tarot, you've got these 22 major arcana cards, and the 22 cards represents different phases and experiences of our life. And so when you're doing the reading, you can actually find that these phases represents parts of yourself and parts of your life's journey. So I find that really, really fascinating. And it really helped me get to know the cards in a new way. Another few things just to note is the correction of the elements in the tarot deck. The wands are fire, the swords are air, the pentacles are earth, and the cups, of course, are water. But in the original Rider-Waite, the fire element was concealed from the wands because they didn't want to give away all of the secrets of the Golden Dawn. So this is my favorite tarot, and another thing that I really love is the court cards, which is your princes, your princesses, the hermit. How cool is that? So cool. Your princes, your princesses, your kings, and your queens. For me, they became really clear on how to get to know the court cards, which was a really essential part of my training in learning to read the tarot. Because if you know anything about the court cards, they all represent these characters and these aspects of people and ourselves. And so when you're doing a tarot card reading, when a court card shows up, it could represent, a part of yourself. It could represent a character in your life, a phase of your life, an energy of a situation. It really just depends on how the cards lay together. But what I really loved was learning all of the suits. So let's put them in order just now. We've got the swords, the cups, the pentacles, the wands. So swords, the cups, the wands. So you've got these 4 suits of different characters. So let's talk about the cups first of all. So it starts with the princess, the prince, who's essentially the knight, and then the king, and then the queen, right? So the princesses of every suit represents these more vulnerable, sensitive, curious aspects of an energy, whereas the prince is coming into, growth and maturity, and then the king is like finding your place in the world, and the queen is really the highest card as far as I'm concerned. It's about mastery and finding one's place in the world. But every suit has a different theme to it. So the cups are ruled by water. And so your cup personalities are dreamers, they're emotional, they're sensitive, they're intuitive. They've got this elusive nature. Sometimes they can be hard to read. They hold everything dear to themselves. And so when you look at the cup characters, you can see that there's a poise, but there's also this depth to them. Whereas the pentacles are more grounded. They're ruled by earth, so it's about having 2 feet on the earth, being more kind of sturdy, serious, solid. The wands are ruled by fire, so they're your fiery types. They're like the go-getters, the fire in your belly people. They can be a little bit argumentative. They can be highly passionate, driven. They are often achievers. Being in this place of making stuff happen. Whereas your sword people, well, they're your cut through the bullshit kind of people. They're like to the point. They can be cool because they're ruled by air, so they could be cold. I've always said that the the Queen of Swords is a woman who knows what it's like to be alone. And if you look at the Queen of Swords card, I mean, look at this woman. She is not to be messed with. So when I was learning the tarot, like all these personalities that are through it, the aliveness of this particular tarot deck really allowed me to learn the tarot in a completely new way. So this is I would say my favorite tarot. I think if I was, doing a reading these days, I would get a lot of information about it. But because I'm someone who genuinely is passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I don't think everyone would be able to find themselves in this tarot now if they were limited by the skin tones included. The personality types, absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why I probably wouldn't use it as much these days, because, I have read for people from every walk of life and from all four corners of the earth. And I really like to be able to use a tarot or an oracle deck for people who can find themselves in it. Even if it's just one card, that sense of being seen is really important. But if you are in the British Isles, if you are fascinated by Wicca, Druidry, the legends of the goddess and the god, the old gods, then this is an amazing tarot really to get to know a lot of the lore and the myths that are connected to the British Isles. It was created by the Carr-Gomms, which is a husband and wife duo, and the artist is this guy called Will Worthington. I have two of his originals from another tarot deck that he created with this same publisher as well. So really love the DruidCraft Tarot, one of my favorites, and it really helped me get to know the tarot in a completely new way. And if you look at it, you'll see how well loved it is. So this is the DruidCraft Tarot.